Black queens forever, snow bunnies never. I said black queens forever, snow bunnies never. I said black queens forever, snow bunnies never.
What happens when the man who built his entire image shouting black queens forever, snow bunnies never, ends up wanting to shoot a scene with a white woman who's completely topless? For years, he's called himself the Prince of Pan-Africanism, preaching loyalty to black women and warning his followers to stay far from snow bunnies. His speeches went viral, his slogan became a meme, and his confidence made him a cult-like figure online. But now, whispers about a film called Awaken, directed by Marianne Laurent, a respected filmmaker. Umar allegedly wanted her to direct a scene where he appears with a white woman. Was it a real proposal?
This is from Dr. Umar. He told me, Queen, this is how we're going to do this scene. I'm going to be bare-chested. This woman's going to have exposed breasts, and she's going to be pressing against my chest. I don't know if he thought I was doing a porn video, because we told him a feature film.
Before the lawsuits, the rumors, and the snow bunny jokes, Dr. Umar Johnson was seen as a man on a mission. He called himself the Prince of Pan-Africanism, the intergalactic heavyweight champion, even the portly prince of Pan-African pimping. Umar turned what could have been small-town activism into a full-blown brand. He preached black unity, economic independence, and protecting the black family from outside influence. Every rant, every speech, every viral clip carried the same message: black queens forever, snow bunnies never. Then came the fundraising. Umar promised to build the first independent all-black boys academy, the FDMG Academy, named after Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey. Donations poured in. He toured the country, hosted conscious lectures, and sold out auditoriums. But the bigger his platform grew, the more outrageous his personality became. He started referring to himself as the Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion of Pan-Africanism. He hyped up events like the Pan-African Pimping Picnic, turning serious activism into something between a sermon and a comedy special. And when those headlines started piling up, Dr. Umar Johnson went from revolutionary to running joke, almost overnight. But that message started to look a little shaky when filmmaker Marianne Laurent, creator of Awaken, came forward with a surprising story.
This is from Dr. Umar. He told me, Queen, this is how we're going to do this scene. I'm going to be bare-chested. This woman's going to have exposed breasts, and she's going to be pressing against my chest. I don't know if he thought I was doing a porn video, because we told him a feature film. But moving along, and they're like, well, we don't need... I said, well, I'm going to finish. Whether you want to hear it or not, I'm going to finish. I said that's what he wanted. And then the scene, I'm going to break it down to you, family. The scene was for him to go, he came to his senses because he had a moment of weakness. This is him typing all this garbage to me. He came to his weakness because he had a moment of weakness, and he's going to go, no, I am a Pan-African leader. I can't stoop to this level. Black queen forever, snow bunny never, and I'm going to throw her off the bed. This is what he wanted to incorporate in the movie. And I said, no, we're not doing that. And I told you guys in the video, I regret it. What would I give to have these footage of this woman breast implanted in his chest? I would have loved it.
And the irony? That same Umar supposedly wanted the moment to represent him resisting temptation, proving his loyalty to the Black Queen. But to everyone watching, it sounded like a fantasy wrapped in fake righteousness. People online immediately called it out. How you yelling snow bunnies never while trying to cast one in your movie? The internet didn't let him breathe for a second. Memes popped up calling him intergalactic rib tip, portly prince of Pan-African pimpin', and other names that blended comedy with criticism. Because once your brand becomes moral superiority, even one rumor like this can flip your whole image. Whether the scene ever existed or not, almost didn't matter. It felt believable to people who'd already seen Umar's contradictions pile up. The man who told others to reject temptation was suddenly accused of writing it into a movie script. And that's the dangerous thing about a slogan. When it becomes your entire personality, it only takes one exposed moment to turn it into a punchline. Now let's talk about the part that really makes people's blood boil. The money. Because long before the movie scandal, Dr. Umar Johnson was already catching heat for something bigger. The endless donations and the mysterious school that never seemed to open. For years, he's been saying the same thing. We're building the first ever Black-owned independent academy for our boys. Sounds powerful, right? Except people started noticing the same question popping up year after year. Where's the school? He raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. Supporters mailed checks, hit the Cash app, sent whatever they could, all for what they thought was a revolution in education. But what they got was 2 abandoned buildings in Delaware, empty halls, broken tiles, and a lot of live streams filmed from the parking lot. Critics started calling it the FDMG crack spot, saying it looked more like a forgotten warehouse than a school for the future. And every time someone questioned the progress, Umar had a new reason. The contractors backed out. The city's holding me up, or the ancestors are testing us. Meanwhile, rumors say he kept pushing for more donations, hosting fundraisers, and promising grand openings that never came. 6 years later, still no classrooms, no teachers, no students. Just slogans, speeches, and that same line. Black queens forever, snow bunnies never, even worse. Reports claimed some of the donation money went toward lawsuits, travel, and personal projects. And while none of that's been proven, the pattern was clear. A man who talks about liberation, but can't even liberate an empty building. Because once you ask people for money in the name of the community, you owe them more than words, you owe them results. And in Umar's case, all anyone seems to have seen are bricks, promises, and excuses. Just when people thought the abandoned school saga couldn't get any worse, another storm hit. She says he became demanding, controlling, even threatening to take legal action if she didn't comply. Eventually, that legal action backfired hard. Reports claim Umar lost the case and had to pay around $70,000, a hit that left supporters wondering where that money really came from. Because, let's be honest, Umar's not exactly running a Fortune 500 company, and that's when the whispers started getting louder. Critics began asking whether donor money, the same funds meant for fixing up the school, ended up going toward lawsuit damages and legal fees. At the same time, accusations from several women began resurfacing online. Stories about manipulation, guilt-tripping, and even threats against women who dared to question him. Most of these claims were never proven, but the pattern was what got people talking. Here was a man preaching, "Protect the Black Queens," yet allegedly turning hostile whenever a Black woman called him out. It created a split in his audience. Some still viewed him as a misunderstood revolutionary, while others saw him as a manipulative showman hiding behind pro-Black slogans. And what made it worse? He never really addressed any of it directly. Instead, he doubled down. More live streams, more slogans, more calls for donations. But at this point, every brothers and sisters sounded a little less like leadership, and a little more like damage control. Because when your entire brand is built on empowerment, and the people you're accused of exploiting are the very ones you claim to uplift, that's not just hypocrisy. That's collapse in slow motion. At this point, it's not just about Dr. Umar Johnson anymore. It's about the people who believed in him. Because when someone positions themselves as a leader, a teacher, a voice for the people, they don't just build a following, they build faith. And faith is hard to earn, but even harder to get back once it's broken. Thousands of supporters sent donations, showed up to his events, and repeated his message. Black unity, Black power, Black love, they weren't just buying into Umar the man, they were buying into the movement he claimed to represent. But what happens when the man behind the message starts acting like the very thing he warned you about? When the leader who preached discipline, accountability, and integrity gets caught in stories about money, lawsuits, and ego, that's when the real test begins. Not for him, but for his followers. Do you keep defending him because of what he used to stand for, or do you step back and ask the hard questions? For many in the community, this became a wake-up call. It showed how easily passion can turn into blind loyalty, and how pro-Black leadership can sometimes mask personal ambition. Because at the end of the day, real leadership isn't about who yells the loudest or collects the most donations. It's about consistency, doing the work, even when the cameras are off. And that's the conversation this whole situation forces us to have. If the person you look up to starts walking a different path than they preach, are you brave enough to walk away? Because sometimes the hardest form of loyalty is loyalty to truth, not to titles. In the end, the story of Dr. Umar Johnson isn't just about a lawsuit, a controversy, or another viral headline. It's about the complicated relationship between image and integrity. Because the truth is, charisma can be powerful. It can move people, inspire action, and create movements. But charisma without accountability? That's when admiration turns into confusion. And sometimes, betrayal. We've seen it happen time and time again. Leaders rise from the community, speak to our pain, promise to build something bigger than themselves. And then the weight of that image starts to crack under the pressure of reality. Umar's story forces a difficult question, one that extends far beyond him. How do we separate the message from the messenger? Is it possible for someone to say the right things, yet live in contradiction to their own teachings? And if that's the case, do we erase the message, or do we evolve past the person delivering it? Because for every follower who still stands by Umar, there's another who feels disappointed, not just in him, but in what his downfall represents. The fear that maybe every leader, no matter how passionate or educated, eventually reveals human flaws beneath the rhetoric. But maybe that's where real growth begins. When the community learns to think critically, to question boldly, and to hold even its heroes accountable. In a world where social media turns speakers into celebrities overnight, we have to ask ourselves, are we supporting a movement, or are we worshiping a man? And that's the real call to thought here. Leadership isn't about perfection, it's about honesty. It's about living the values you demand from others. So before you like, share, or follow the next leader that shows up on your screen, take a moment. Ask yourself, is this person living what they preach, or just performing it? Because in the end, every movement's true strength isn't found in one man's voice, but in the people who choose to think for themselves.